Okay. Right, we're off. It's Tony here from the Phono Stage Audio video channel. And I'm going to attempt to do another this is the second video in one day, right? So I've been off, got myself a snack, been to the toilet, been careful not to get drips on these trousers because they really show it up. That'll be the end of my cinematic career. And yeah, so while I'm all set up and everything like that, and I'm in the mood, it's morning, but I'm feeling it. I thought I would just get on and talk to you about the Moor Amps Angel 6 Power Amplifier, okay? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Hey Bella, stop drifting around the room. Come on, sit and lie down like a good girl. Come on, lie down, lie down, lie down, down, and wait. Will she wait? Who knows? Right, so this is the Phono Stage Audio video channel. Yeah, you may have seen us before, may have seen me before. If not, nice to meet you. Before I start, I'm just going to ask you, because I'll forget later on, always do. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your HiFi buddies or anybody who cares. That would be really super helpful to me. It really would. And if you subscribe, you know, I know I've been slacking it a bit lately for family life, right? But, you know, I've got a few things planned, which is why I'm doing 2 in one day, right? So with no further ado, while it's quiet, everybody's gone out. There's no traffic. So I'm going to talk to you about this Angel 6 amplifier. Now, for anybody who follows the channel, you'll see that I already did do a review of the Angel 4 power amplifier with the Angel Pre. This is Moor Amps. It's a British company. The kind of very much sort of handmade amplifiers. The designer, the principal man behind the building of these, his wife is very instrumental in this, I understand. There's a chap called Tim Narramore. The Angel 4 got great reviews, okay? It looks like the Angel 6. This is the Angel 6, right? You see, you can't really see, right? So you got my brew in the way. It's there. It doesn't look like much, does it? It's very unassuming. It's a slab of blackness with this little blue thing on the front. It doesn't do anything else. This is pretty big rack, okay? At least depth-wise. You know, you don't get the scale of it on here. A lot of racks can't really accommodate this thing. You need to be able to fit it in between the front and the rear legs, okay, which you can with this, you know, so because it's as wide, it goes from this corner to this corner. It weighs about 30 kilograms, right? It looks subtle under there, okay, with its little blue light, right? This thing is a bit of a beast, okay? So the Angel 4 looks the same, but it's smaller. It'll fit on any rack, really, you know, most racks. The Angel 4 is similar in tone and nature to the sound of the Angel 6, and when I first heard the Angel 6, the Angel 4, I'd been listening to exposure amps before then, a couple of pre-powers, and then the 3510, which I was really did like. I reviewed that some couple of years ago now. I switched to the Angel 4, the pre and the power amp, and immediately heard the benefits, right? Immediately preferred it. Okay, moving into the Moor Amps kind of stuff, even the 4. It was noticeably better. It was more transparent. Felt like it covered a greater breadth of sound. I was just really happy with it, and I spoke about that in the last review. Taryn, the British audiophile, he did a good review of the Angel 4. You know, similar findings in a lot of respects. I know Taryn's you know, dyed in the wool exposure fan. You know, particularly his own trusty exposure amps there, and he really is tuned into the sound of those, which is a good thing. But me, you know, I was happy to move up into the Angel 4 for regular listening, okay? And then when I got the chance of getting the Angel 6 in here, I thought there was not much point really in a room this size. It's about, what, 4.5 by just under 5, I think it is in here. It's not a huge room, you know, it's like a domestic type room. There's a mixture of sort of soft furnishings, but, you know, the Angel 4 sounded great. I couldn't really see the point, you know, spending that additional money or, you know, or that buy-in, you know, for the Angel 6, but I got it nonetheless. But literally as soon as I switched it on, I could hear the difference. Literally the second I turned it on, there was something that was different. It's like, it's like swapping out a major component. It wasn't just the same and then more volume, or the same but maybe bigger sound, or the same but, it was like the transparency, the little dynamics, the tiny little micro dynamics, all the little. I'll talk about it a bit more, but it was more of the same, but it was more of something else as well, right? The Angel 6, right? I've crowned it, okay, the king of transparency. I've tried other amps, and I've heard a lot of other amps. I've had a lifetime listening to amplifiers. Just recently, I've been trying these Circle Labs amplifiers. I've yet to try the Power Amp, which I'll try, with a passive pre to do a proper kind of A/B comparison. It will have its merits, right? It will have its merits. There's no bad equipment, okay? There's no bad equipment. Somebody designed, whatever it was, they designed it in good faith, with good ears, with good intentions, okay? But as it stands, and I must have been listening to this thing for a couple of years now, I can't see the point of ever changing it, right? Now, maybe, I may look back at this video and think, could I edit that bit out? So, when I'm listening to whatever I'm listening to in the future, yeah, I might change it, right? I might listen to something else extensively in the future. It might suit me purposes more at the time. But in terms of like, what's the point of changing it? There just isn't one, right? It does everything, right? It does everything. Everything to throw at it, it plays it. Every piece of equipment, to swap and change equipment all the time here. There's a business underlying here as well. It's my own personal listening. And stuff comes and goes. These Lampizators at the moment, right? Trying lots of different Lampizators, right up to sort of £20,000 DACs. Turntables, there's a steady flow of like, I've just rebuilt this 401. There's a pink triangle that comes and goes. There's Nottingham analogues that come and go. There's various turntables, It just sits there, kind of welded to the floor with its own mass. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't flash. It doesn't do anything. It's got the pre with it, the Angel pre, passive pre, but with buffered output stages. So sort of pseudo-passive, I don't know, it must be a better way of describing it than that. And I haven't got the pre hooked up at the moment because I'm just using testing out. There's a preamp in this Lampizator Baltic DAC. And I was told, that it's like a, that the pre in it it's a passive type pre is equivalent to like a multiple, sort of £2,000 or £3,000 preamp equivalent, potentially. So I wanted to try this. It is very nice. I'll talk about that again. So I haven't got the pre in here at the moment. But it works perfectly well with other pre's. You just don't get the triggering, the 12-volt triggering to switch it on. There's ways you can get around that, which I could talk to you about. So, but it just sits there as a default value, yeah, as a default value. So I just know that whatever else I change, whatever else I do around it, wherever else I go with it, that will always tell the truth. That will always be there as an open conduit to everything else that I do. Yeah, so I can confidently listen to whatever piece of music I choose to listen to, and I can confidently change a piece of equipment and know that what I'm hearing is the differences in that piece of equipment. Yeah, it's like the common denominator of everything in the system at the moment. I'll tell you a little bit about it, just a little bit. This is not a technical review, okay? You wouldn't go out and buy something just because I told you it had nearly 250,000 microfarads worth of smoothing capacitors in it, right? It's just a fact, right? But it has. So it weighs about 30 kilograms, slightly under. It takes a bit of lifting. You've got to be careful. The Circle Labs stuff, right, is very heavy as well, beautifully built. But I tried to pick up the Power Amp out of the case, this packing case yesterday, and I decided I would need gloves to do that. As soon as I wrapped my hands around it, I thought I'm going to hurt myself here, I'm going to cut myself. Sharp corners, and it weighs a ton. This is nicely rounded off. You could pick it up, but it's bloody heavy, right? Okay, it's heavy. It's not attractive, in a formal sense. I don't know. It's like it reminds me of the 80s. There was a bit of a. It's a bit like the anti-aesthetic movement of the 80s with HiFi, Where because the Japanese stuff, you know, gone through all the 70s and the early 80s of like blue VU meters and Technic stuff and graphic equalizers and, you know, I mean, it looks great now in a retro context, doesn't it? You know, your kind of Sansui blue and all those different things, right? But, you know, the British Hi-Fi, the Creeks and the Onyxes, you know, and those type of things, they were the QED name really, you know, they were trying to sort of like deliberately go against that. They went for these kind of greys, these kind of matte black finishes, as little on it as possible. You know, it was like poo-pooed, the tone control was poo-pooed, you know, and there was this like trying to sort of like anti-aesthetic it. And I feel like, you know, it's gone back a bit the other way. It's bounced back, you know, it hit the wall and it's bounced back and found a middle ground. You know, so the amps, you know, some are more bling, you know, like the MBLs and stuff like that. There's some chrome and chrome bumpers, you know, and grills. And anywhere in between, it hasn't quite, you know, you look at the Nagras or you look at, what was the other one, HiFi Rose amplifier, they've gone right back to crazy, okay? So, but this has stuck with the anti-aesthetic a little bit, right? It does not distract you with the eye. You can concentrate on your front end, or you can concentrate on your speakers, or you can concentrate on your glass of wine, or whatever you want to do, right? It just kind of sits there. It's a common denominator, but it's absolutely amazing, right? It's powerful, but extremely subtle. It delivers 150 watts into 8 ohms. It will do 300 watts, it says, into, you know, into 4 ohms, or up to a 580 watts down, dropping down to 2 ohms, which I'm sure I don't know if it can sustain that for long. Probably not. This will be some sort of speaker behaviour. I know some speakers will fluctuate a lot around in terms of like, you know, like it's isobarics. Are they famous for that? Come on, guys, tell me. And so, you know, it's not short of power, okay. And it's extremely linear, from what I understand. It's very, very low feedback, right? Very low feedback in the design, okay? And it depends very much on extremely smooth power, extremely, you know, well-regulated, smooth, very high-quality power, hence all the capacitance, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And, and the pre that goes with it, the pre, I'd just like to say, right, so the pre in this is very good. You know, the guy, you know, the kind of left ear is right. It's really good. I'd be happy with that. Yeah, this combo, I would be happy with it. It's just that I do know that when I do get the other, you know, I do know that the Angel pre that goes with it, it is slightly better. A little bit more transparent. I'd say a little bit more dynamic, even though it's sort of a passive pre. You wonder how that's possible, but it just must be something, you know, something synergetic about how it goes with, you know, with its with the when you plug it up to hook it up to the mothership, right? But yeah, so it's got the power, but it doesn't sound like a brutish amp, and it's got the dynamics, but it's not like a name, or it's not like a Red Bull amplifier, you know, where you get like an instant hit off it and then you're fatigued afterwards. None of those things, right? It's steady on the ear, right? And it's extremely transparent, extremely detailed, but never harsh, right? Never ever once heard it being harsh, right? I've never been fatigued by it, okay? I've heard it described as an end game amplifier or a final purchase amplifier. It's kind of a fit and forget type thing, you know? I don't know, like getting a good quality roof on your house. You know, you might get all excited about it at the time. Oh, we're going for the proper, like, you know, Welsh slate or whatever like that. Once it's on, it just does its job extremely well, and then you just kind of forget about it. So I'm finding it's a bit like that. I don't sit looking at it. You know, I don't sit perving at my own amplifier. It's just there, and I've got no desire to move it, no desire to change it. So in the kind of the hi-fi business, I spend a lot of time reviewing other stuff. All right, I've just got these Graham Audio speakers here. These are in for review at the moment. I don't know if you can see those. They're quite small behind me. Also, you know, like reviewing and testing and you know, getting involved in a lot of DACs at the moment, various cartridges, cables, interesting interconnects. I've been messing about with these, you know, from quite sort of like, you know, sort of budgety type ones that still sound really nice, like the Graham Slee ones. If you haven't got a lot of money to spend, the Graham Slee cables, tremendous value for money, up to like very unobtainium sort of David Laboga stuff. I can hear the differences. Never bad, right? I can hear the differences. I can hear the subtleties in everything that I sort of run through this amplifier. It doesn't occur to me at any point. There's no trouble. I'm not troubled. It doesn't occur to me that, yeah, but maybe if I tried it with another amp, you know, I don't get that feeling. You know, I just literally just forget about it. It's absolutely marvellous. And it is the king of transparency. The kind of music that I've been listening to, I mean, I listen to all sorts. I listen to a lot of classic rock, kind of 80s stuff, 70s stuff, prog rock stuff. Trying to avoid Pink Floyd too much because it, you know, I really like it. You know, I like Wish You Were Here, but, you know, it kind of gets stuck in your head a little bit, doesn't it? And, you know, you start singing it walking up and down corridors. It's very melodic, isn't it? You know, and I've had a lifetime of it. And I try and listen to a lot of other things. You know, I try and listen to a lot of different things. We were talking in the previous review about, you know, going back to some of the things that I used to listen to. You know, like Rollins band, you know, and maybe some Whitesnake, just things that, Uriah Heep, going back, you know, and seeing what they sound like kind of in the modern age when I was so into them when I was younger, you know, and how to capture that into themness, right? And I was getting it. I've been getting it with these Graham audio speakers, these LS44s lately. If you watch the LS44 review, you'll hear me talking about this concept of kind of like, you know, what it was like when you were 18 to be really into music in such a big way that it's never sounded quite so good since, even though everything else around you's got better. The equipment's got better, you know, the production maybe's got better, you know, the remixes, remasters, you know, nothing quite sounds the same as putting Dire Straits on in your bedroom in 1984 or something, full blast, when you've just come back with an LP and you're so into it, you know, you're so into it. So I've been trying to, I've been on a bit of a mission to try and recapture that feeling, yeah? Not to lose that at the expense of hunting for detail and hunting for quality and hunting for this. And I'm finding it. I'm beginning to sort of like put that together. Like those speakers do it better than any others I've had in here previously. And but then the amp lets them do it, right? The amp is not a thing that prevents anything from doing anything else, right? It seems to be so open to suggestion and so open to like the interpretation of the source material and the source components. So that leads me to think that it must be quite neutral. Okay, so, and it's hard to say what's neutral when you've got a chain of things, especially when it's in the middle of the chain. So I'm going to say that in nature, it's quite neutral. When I play things certain type, you know, if I change tube, been doing quite a bit of tube rolling, okay, so if I change between like this, it's a Sophia electric tube that I tried in this Atlantic DAC, this Sophia tube, it was a beautiful thing, you know, the imaging, really like center focused image, and then the separation was fantastic. In a rectifier tube, this you change it, you know, and then I changed it to this Fever tube, is that how you say it, you know. Yeah, but the Sophia didn't quite have the dynamics, you know. It kind of felt like it was like just a bit too nice, you know. So and then I thought, you know, I swapped it for a couple of others, and then I ended up with this kind of Fever tube, and I got those little dynamics back, but I still kept the majority of that imaging. And I thought, this is the one, right? And that's in it at the moment. So, but when I experiment with these things and when I mess about with these things, you know, the increase or the decrease in dynamics, the increase or the decrease in separation, or the accurate placement of things, or what happens to the reverbs, or what happens to the micro dynamics, you know, again, I'm going to invite you to watch the Graham 44 LS44 review where I talk about Starsailor and that hi-hat and how to get the dynamics out of, you know, they're in there somewhere, but they're not produced brilliantly, you know. They kind of maybe produced more with the radio in mind, or the television, or whatever like that. And compression ruins dynamics. So when you get music like when you get music like I talked about Greta Van Fleet, The Darkness, you know, Flaming Lips, Muse, where the kind of, you know, it's kind of all a bit squashed and the dynamics are quite muted, you know, and you're trying to sort of extract individual instrumentation and detail out of that. It's very hard to do when that instrument hasn't got any height to it, yeah? So if everything's similar height and you're trying to extract and separate out the sounds of the individual ones, it's more difficult because they're all so similar, right? You know, if things have different heights, then they become even more discrete when you get good equipment that can separate them up. So, you know, using like different tubes or different DACs, different front ends, different cartridges, yeah, and having different speakers, and the strength of these was the ability to reflect those differences and to help to separate out those elements. So even fairly, you know, mediocrely produced or overly compressed things, there was still some fun to be had in them. Did they take me back to the 80s? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes maybe a bit less so. But the point I'm trying to make is, right, that in the middle of all this, changing your source things, pissing about with your valves, right, changing speakers or moving them or changing the position, you know, and all that stuff, all that's hampered, isn't it? If the thing that you put in the middle of it, right, isn't just right, you know, if it's either adding some sort of fatiguing dynamics, if it's a Red Bull effect, or if it's like, you know, if it's cushioning, if it's like a swampy thing, if it's whatever it is, if the thing in the middle, yeah, isn't fully supporting your efforts, right, 100%, so you're confident in it and you can literally forget about it, and then its looks contribute to that as well, you know, then you're never going to fully have the positive experience, I don't think, that you're entitled to, that you're spending your money on, that you're kind of working towards. So the Angel 6, better than the Angel 4, is very, very transparent and very responsive to dynamics in source and production changes, right? Responsive, yeah? Not adding, right? It's responsive, okay? It's very responsive, you know, in the sense of like when you change speakers, I believe I'm hearing all the differences in the speakers. When I change the source or even a cable, you know, I believe I'm hearing all the differences in the cable, right? I believe I'm being told the truth, yeah? That's really, really good, right? Really important for me. I believe I'm being told the truth. So I don't challenge it. You know, I don't find myself in an argument with my own equipment. I don't turn around and say, yeah, but you said this, right? But, you know, you said it, but then you said such a thing about such a thing. And now you're saying this about that. You know, so what is it you're actually saying? Yeah, so I don't have those discussions, right? I just have another glass of wine, right? Put another record on. And I really, really, really enjoy it. So I've been listening to English Teacher, right? And there's a couple of tracks, right? There's one in particular that I'm going to draw attention to. I'm going to draw attention to a couple of tracks, and I mentioned them in some of the other reviews because I've been using them as sort of review tracks at the moment. So there's one called Blister My Paint, or You Blister My Paint, and there's some sort of vocals at the beginning of it, and there's pianos in it. There's different things going on in there. And when you listen to it, it's not overtly produced. So when I first heard it, I've been listening to a lot of, I've been listening to Big Swimmer, right, by King Hana for a good while prior to that. And it's got this lush, right, vocals. This vocals are just so super gorgeous and lush. And the guitars are raucous and subtle and sometimes, and the drumming's great. It's a fantastic album, right? It was, I think it was a Quobuz favourite for a while. If you haven't heard that album, right, listen to Big Swimmer by King Hana. It's beguiling and haunting and beautiful and fantastic and great guitars and stuff. So, but the production's right there. The voice is like this, it can be quite echoey, very present voice in the middle there like that. And after listening to it, you get a bit spoiled, right? So then switched to English Teacher, which I then discovered some time ago. And immediately it all sounded a bit shrunk, you know, and a little bit more compressed and a little bit less obvious, right? So I thought, you know, it was a recommendation off a mate of mine. He said, oh, you got to listen to this, have a listen to this. You know, they sing about coal, it's just up the road from here, so we're getting all mushy about that. So pretty well, yeah, I wasn't too impressed straight away. And then I thought, but then, you know, then I started to, you know, as I listened to it more and more, I began to realise, obviously, that detail and those dynamics are within it. You just get that kind of deficit syndrome. When you've come from something that's one way and there appears to be a deficit, but it's not really a deficit. If you want to test the strength of that deficit, put something on like I spoke about Starsailor. I've been listening to like that track, Poor Misguided Fool, and the album that it goes with it. you know, that is not very well produced, right? It's not very well produced at all, right? And you switch to English teach, you think that's great, it's spacious and whatever. So it's all relative. You've got to give your ears a chance to adjust to the relativity. So, so I've been listening to English teacher and some of those tracks on it, and you can really kind of like hear those kind of dynamics and those details, right? In that track, you know, it gets quite complex towards the end, okay, and a bit mixed up sounding. There's lots of kind of effects going on. They're analog effects, you know, you can see the guy on stage doing it with like what looks like a kind of guitar type pedal, twiddling it with his hand and stuff, and it all gets mixed in the mix. And different pieces of equipment decode that in different ways, to the extent where, you know, sometimes you don't feel like it's very well decoded at all. So, and it can be hard, you know, it's not that obvious. It can be very hard to sort of like maintain the structure of that passage and the beauty of the beginning bit of the passage and the anguish in the voice and stuff. It can be hard to kind of keep all that together, yeah? So as I swap and change different like front-endy bits and different speakers and stuff, I hear the varying degrees in that. But the Moor amps, you know, when you get it right, you realise that the amplifier, yeah, has had it all along, you know. It's just waiting for the truth to be pumped into it, yeah, and it's waiting for you to strap some speakers to it that will tell the truth on the way out. And the same very much goes for, as I said, about Poor Misguided Fool, a great track driven by the hi-hat that you can hardly bloody hear because the, you know, the production is questionable, you know. But, you know, if you get it right, you know, on the way in and get it right on the way out, you can trust that the amp will give you a faithful reproduction in the middle. And it's got so much transparency available that no matter how detailed it gets, either at the front or the back, you know, or no matter how spatial it gets, when you start to get to the stage where, you know, I tried the Genya DAC. I mean, that was incredible experience, just an incredible experience, you know. I'm just trying to think, you know, trying to weigh up what would I get for one kidney that's probably been quite abused, you know, for most of its life, because it was a beguiling, beautiful instrument, right? The Lampizator Genya. Switching up to that, very expensive piece of equipment, you know, through some very expensive cables. You know, I was putting these David Laboga unobtainium USB cables into it. Those differences, you know, still absolutely pumped through faithfully through the Moor amps. You know, it became an incredible experience. So I would say that, you know, no matter what equipment you're putting into it, you change up your front end, you'll get it back out the other end. Okay, change your speakers, then wherever's available at the front end, you will detect it at your speakers. So it's an open conduit, yeah. That detail and those dynamics are born out of what happens at the front end and how you reproduce it at the back end. I don't believe that amp is adding or taking anything away. I think it's extremely linear. Okay, I think it's powerful enough to and responsive enough and dynamic enough to respond to any changes that you pump in at the front end, no matter how quick or how demanding. And I think the transparency is such that I haven't out-transparencied it. Right, okay, the new word there. I love doing that. I haven't out-transparencied it, okay? So it's a confidence-inspiring amplifier. I mean, all this sounds a bit superlative, doesn't it? It sounds like I'm sucking up to Tim big time, you know? I mean, he's a nice guy, you know, but I'm not sucking up to Tim, right? I'm not sucking up to him at all, right? I don't think he's stumbled upon this, right? I'm going to say I think he's really stumbled on something here. I met him the one time a little while ago, and he just told me a little bit about, you know, like the history of it and how he was just telling me how he'd kind of I think he'd invented one, right? He had this idea in his head, this kind of low feedback, zero feedback, low feedback idea. He had this idea about doing amps in a slightly different way, and he tried it. I think he'd invented one, come up with a prototype, tried it, and then sort of put that by the wayside, and then tried again, put that by the wayside, and that there's like piles of, you know, attempts, right, at doing this. Okay, this isn't something that he just had some idea or just put it into a computer or whatever like that. It was developed. It was born out of an idea, a pure idea as to what he wanted to hear, and eventually it clicked, and there it was. And you know, it's, you know, you probably know, if you're reading, if you're listening to this, you probably already read, you know, the Ear magazine review, and you know that certain reviewers have bought one of these now off the strength of the, you know, the review copy they were given, the review item that they were loaned. They've gone and bought one for themselves, you know, and I'm sure, you know, I've not spoken to them, you know, like, but I'm sure that the you know, like, is Jason Kennedy or whoever, that they'd probably just say a similar thing, really, that as a reviewer, they've kept it because no matter what front ends they're messing with, and no matter what speakers they're messing with, right, that they can be very confident in knowing that they're getting the full story. Yeah, very confident they're getting the full story, and that they're being told the truth, and they're not going to argue with it, right? Yeah, but you said this, right? That is not a conversation that they need to be having if they're reviewing professionally. Yeah, so I've mentioned a few things that I've been listening to. You know, I'm not going to go on too much about that, really, because you're all going to listen to your own things anyway. You know, watch some of my other videos, and you'll see that, like, I do have sort of default listening things, and every now and then I add to it. So I've certainly added King Hana to it, and I've certainly added English Teacher to it. Recently-ish, I've added Jenny Lewis to it. That album, Joy Y'all, with Nate Smith playing drums. Yeah, I won't wax lyrical about drummers today. So yeah, what I was saying. Yeah, so, but I won't go on too much about the music I've been listening to. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the nature of the sound and what it conveys and what it means to me, right? So faithfulness, I believe it's telling me the truth. So I have a good relationship with it, right? I have a good relationship with it. I've got no desire to change it, right? I don't care how it looks because I don't think about how it sounds, right? I think about the source components, I think about the tubes, I think about the cartridges, I think about the cables, I think about the speakers, I think about the positioning of the speakers, I think about the spikes, I think about the rubber feet, right? I don't think about the amplifier, right? I'm having a very good, happy relationship with the amplifier, okay? And I would suggest to you, if you were to consider buying one, or that was the dream that you were aspiring to when you're on amplifier number 17, right? Yeah, another unhappy relationship might come your way. Seriously give it some thought, okay? Seriously give it some thought. And ask us in the comments, right? If you want any more questions, right? I have extensively listened to this. This isn't just some sort of shop thing, right? Okay, I have one of these at home. I listen to it all the time, right? Okay, I'm another one who has decided they're keeping one, right, for themselves. So ask me if you've any questions. Ask me if you've any questions. If you've got any listening suggestions, I'm always open to that. And don't forget, yeah, please like and subscribe and do all that other stuff, right? Do it, okay? Because that really helps me. I want to do more videos, right? And the more you do that, the more people see it, you know, as well. Sharing it, you know, that helps a lot. The more people see it, the more likely I am to come up with some words of wisdom that might inspire you. Right, so I hope that has helped. I hope it's helped, right? Because this is an amplifier that people talk about with superlatives and reviewers keep for themselves. And you hear these, oh, this is the final purchase amplifier and all that. Yeah, well, that's great, but I think you need to sort of like, I think you need to talk to somebody who lives with one, right? Talk to somebody who lives with one in an ordinary house, in an ordinary size room, yeah? And who likes messing about with equipment and who likes messing about with music, okay? And I will stop it there really and summarise very briefly that it is, as I said at the beginning, it is the king of transparency, yeah? Not brightness, not harshness. Straight through, clear like a piece of glass, transparency. So thank you very much, Tim, for your fantastic invention, right? I'll be listening to it for many years more. And thanks everybody for watching. Like, subscribe, share, come back, watch more videos and all that sort of thing. And I'll see you soon. Bye.